Welcome to Not the Tin Dog Podcast, or indeed...
TMDWP.
Yes. You see, you hang around for 300 episodes of the TDP, waiting for an extra co-host, and eventually you get one. Well, just for a one-off anyway.
Yes, and you hang around for almost 5 years of TMDWP, and yes, we do this. Hurrah!
Hurrah!
This is something new for TMDWP. I mean, I've done this on other people's shows, but never on my own. So this is interesting stuff.
Exactly. You see, now we're both used to talking to ourselves. You literally on video and editing yourself into your own conversations, which is lovely. And I just talk to myself, hoping there's at least 2 listeners.
Yeah, I talk to myself with the screen facing back at me, kind of showing me. It's almost like looking in a mirror. Though I have to kind of stop looking at that bit and look down the lens. So it's yes, it's a fun process. Which there's a time lapse out there of me recording a recent episode on YouTube somewhere. If you want to see how boring that process is.
Well, there you go then. So, we're here for a reason, I'm guessing, or are we just here to talk nonsense to each other?
Well, I think there's a bit of both, really, but... I mean,
it's a good point, well made.
This all started with me doing an episode about interacting with fandom, I think, didn't it? As to, for most of my, I suppose, growing up, with Doctor Who, it was me and I suppose my brother and our family when we could get them to watch, and so my view of the show was formed by that. And I suppose it wasn't until I started to read Doctor Who magazine about a decade ago, and then more recently with the podcasting to get involved with fandom, that I realised that other people watched the show differently to me and had come to different conclusions about some of it, either in terms of narrative or in terms of kind of extrapolating beyond what we've seen on the show. And that's where you came in, I suppose. Yeah,
well, what I used to do, I grew up with it as a family thing, and I was watching it with my dad. And earliest memories are, they're just watching things like Creature from the Pit and that sort of series, when Doctor Who was genuinely cheap. And we would enjoy it and we would chat and things like that, and that was absolutely spot on. But it wasn't until I started going to, here we are, the Wallsend Adventure Role Players, there you are, role-playing club, where I would play Call of Cthulhu and Paranoia and a host of other games, as well as good old-fashioned D&D, showing my age completely there, that I met one of my best mates, my best mate Andy Barber, who was a massive Doctor Who fan as well, and we used to just discuss all sorts of nonsense, stuff like that. He had incredible fan theories, stuff like Doctor Who is actually a show being performed backwards, which is how come the Doctor knows exactly what's going on at all times. And he gets more and more doddery as he gets younger, because in fact he's getting older. And I would nod politely and go, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but go for it. And that's the sort of stuff he'd come out with, which is great. He's no longer with us, but yeah.
That does explain why the later Doctors look up to the first Doctor.
Exactly, that makes no sense.
It's always been a slightly odd thing. It's like, yes, he's the older one in terms of his age as a person in the real world, but in script terms, he's the youngest and the least experienced. And yet, in the 3 Doctors and then the 5 Doctors, when he's played by a completely different actor, they sort of respect him.
Good Lord.
They respect him because he's like...
the first one.
He's the first one, but actually they should be like, shut up, young chap.
But in all fairness, it is also how people react to children, giving them mock perfect attention. And also it's how people react to incredibly old relatives, where you just kind of nod along and act as though you're paying a lot of attention to them, but really you're kind of watching the TV over their shoulder. I'm not coming across as a nice person here, but that's fine.
I can see how you could make the case for that in the 5 Doctors.
Yeah.
But with the 3 Doctors, it's actually the first Doctor that works out what's going on. Like, what's the bridge for? Crossing. Well, cross it then. And he's very much the one who knows what's going on, whilst the other two are just bickering away. Anyway.
No, I can completely see your point there. I've still no idea how that works. I mean, my equal theory was that there's a unit in the TARDIS console that was plugged in backwards, and it was built by the Time Lords to avoid trouble. And what it does is it takes you to places so you can just observe and have a lovely time and not alter history. And what it's done is it's been inserted into the console backwards, which is why all the Type 40s were removed, because it actually takes you to places that are just dangerous. It never takes you to anywhere boring.
This is interesting. This would explain certain things, or until the Doctor's Wife, when we sort of had an explanation of why the Doctor.
Well, exactly. I was watching the Doctor's Wife, going, "Oh, fair enough then." But that introduced a whole new can of worms and kettles of fish and everything. But as long as you don't think about it, it works. And that's true of a lot of Doctor Who. As long as you don't think about it and just let it wash over you, that's fine.
Well, I suppose that leads us into the different directions that we both went in our own podcasts.
Definitely.
In that, I think I probably started off trying to make it all add up, because that's what you do as a child. You're trying to figure out. It's your approach to the whole world. You think, right, the whole world's out there, it's been going for ages, it must make sense. Yeah. That's your first mistake as a kid. Yeah. Thinking the whole world makes sense and it all must fit together and function properly. Well, and you're watching something and you go, well, this must obey the same sort of rules. It must all work because, there's only a handful of stories. They must all fit together. Someone must have watched them all and written it all down. And these are all assumptions you make as a kid, and they're just not true. Everyone was just making it up as they're going along. Yes, yeah. And I love Stephen Moffat's latest production notes in Doctor Who magazine. I haven't agreed with everything he's done with the show, but there's this question and answer thing with him, and he talks about what will happen when we get to the 14th Doctor, and he just says they'll do what they've been doing all along. They'll make something up.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, I don't know whether you read it, his comment about the plot hole in The Snowmen.
Which one?
Well, he doesn't actually elaborate on what it is, but it's quite clear that he's obviously realised that people are going, hang on, the great intelligence is being created in the 19th century, and yet by the time the Doctor meets him in 1935, he's been possessing Padmasambhava for 300 years. And he basically just says, there's an answer to that, it's called time travel. Which I quite like, because it's perfect, because if the great intelligence has no mass, which he kind of does, he therefore will not be affected by E=mc², and therefore can travel through time at will. It's brilliant, but I like the fact that we have a showrunner who thinks we're intelligent enough to work these things out. Because that was when somebody pointed out, I was like, oh, and then I was like, well, surely he can just travel in time.
He doesn't actually. The first time we meet him as the second Doctor, the Tibet thing, could take place after the. It doesn't even have to happen in the right order. I mean, it does, because obviously it's the same. It's physically the same Yeti, although one of them does get sort of changed and morphs into Yeti Mark II.
Yes.
But you actually see that, so it's all up in the air. But the great intelligence, like I said in the review, is the most perfect monster to bring back, because he's got no physical form. You don't even have to redesign the makeup. Yeah. And metal spheres are, they're quite easy to make if you want to do that. Yeah. So it's an absolute spot on. I can't believe I didn't spot GI, Great Intelligence, when I was watching it. And the year before, when I saw the big shiny spheres come out of the tree and the Lion, the Witch and the TARDIS. And I was going, oh, Yeti, Great Intelligence, the year before.
That was my thought,
and that was wrong as well. Yep. So I'm just sitting here going, I know nothing, just let it happen. Well, so my theory, although it was what I came back to you with, this is my fan theory of how things all fit together. Yes. You are completely correct in the sense that, it's a TV show. people were making it up as they went along. Some things won't make sense. One week Susan's psychic, the next week she's just a screaming teenager.
Exactly.
But that's why the actors were kicking off, going, can we not have some continuity?
Yeah.
Stephen is a space engineer, a rocketeer, and then after a few weeks, he's a man who just talks about cows in helmets. You are so right in saying that it just flowed, and the Doctor only had one heart because no one had the nerve to turn up and go, no, in fact, in 10 years' time, you'll have two hearts.
Yeah.
Because that's just silly. But it does make sense. If you really want to cram loads of back history in, we can. We've got nothing better to do, so we do.
Yeah, and I mean, I very much enjoyed what you had to say. I mean, it's not my thing in terms of fandom. I'm not into writing fan fiction or anything.
Yeah.
But when other people do it, particularly in an interesting way, I was like, well, yes, there are ways that you can tie stuff up. You can go, okay, well, the Doctor had access to Validium, the Hand of Omega, and all this stuff, and yes, Anthony Coburn had no idea when he wrote An Unearthly Child that that's what was going on. But it's so ambiguous as to what the Doctor and Susan are doing in 1963 anyway, that you can... I think the problem that I have is that when there is something said on the show, which is then contradicted by something else, that I go, well, yes, you can tie yourself in knots trying to sort that stuff out, but I'm not that bothered. But where there is kind of room for saying what you said, which is fine, that may be what happened if somebody ever writes that story.
And on top of all of that, the one thing that we both forgot was the one thing that Russell T Davies made very clear in the Writer's Guide, which is in sci-fi, no one lies. Because in soaps, in any other drama, one character can say something, basically drama set in an agreed-upon real-world setting.
Yes.
Character A can say something that doesn't fit the facts, like a detective drama. And the audience can kind of figure it out. But in sci-fi, if character A says something that doesn't fit the facts, we all go off on a tangent going, oh, how can we make that fit the facts? Yeah. Rather than going, that character's lying, that character... Like, Susan, hello, I made up the word TARDIS. Is that A, the truth, which is what sci-fi fans have believed and tried to shoehorn into the show? B, a teenage girl trying to show off, thinking these humans are never going to get to Gallifrey, they'll just believe me? Or C, just a throwaway line. And it could be any of exactly. It could be any of these things, and two of them are still us fans trying to shoehorn something in. But at least one of them is, it's a teenager just saying a line describing the ship. It's like the TARDIS is a Mark IV TARDIS, and a Mark V TARDIS is what the Meddling Monks got. But it's also a Type 40. So is it a Type 40 Mark IV and a Mark V? Or is it totally different? Or does it not matter?
Well, and then you have the question of the TARDIS translation circuits, which which I did an episode a while back saying that I wasn't a big fan of, because I think, again, for me as a viewer, to be honest, it was a question that never really occurred to me. So, yes, if I thought about it, I'd been like, how are they speaking to those cavemen who don't know English? How are they speaking to Marco Polo and the Chinese who are speaking presumably Italian and Chinese? How are they speaking to the Aztecs who are presumably speaking, I don't know what the Aztecs spoke? But you don't think about that. You just go, it's a TV show. But anyway, given that we now have this... No,
can I just stop you? It's a TV show. You go, I'm a kid watching a kid's TV show, right? It's fine. I'm not going to question it. It's not important.
Well,
but it's when you're an adult and you're watching it back, start trying to be all clever and go, oh, how did they do that?
Yeah.
And because it's a sci-fi show, you can find a reason. But there are other programs where it wouldn't come into it. I mean, I'm not going to say hello, because everyone was just putting a silly accent, but you get what I mean. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, but now we have this kind of written into the show. This now gives fans another avenue of stuff, because they can just go, well, it's an imperfect translation. Susan and the Doctor aren't speaking English, and so what they say to Ian and Barbara might be affected in that way. I don't know. I don't. As I say, I'm not a big fan of coming up with these theories, but I'm just saying it's there. for fans to play with now.
And for people who think that this is important, the one thing that gets away from that, and it's the one thing in Star Trek as well, for their universal translator built into their badge, which wasn't in the original series, but let that go, because I'm sure Star Trek fans will come and get me, because they're all organised. It's the lip sync with English.
Of course, yes. No, this was my point. I think I made was that you've got to believe that the TARDIS translation circuits can also morph the perception of the other people, so that it looks like the lips are moving.
And that works perfectly well until you get to A Good Man Goes to War, when the word doctor suddenly means great warrior. Because if the TARDIS translation circuit was translating it, it would be, so, you know the great warrior, do you? Not, so you know the doctor, which means great warrior, but I've just told you it means great warrior, so you should be hearing great warrior, not the doctor. Well, I'm going to have a nice lie down now.
Then you have all those times during the classic series when other languages were spoken.
Well, that's true.
Within range of the TARDIS. You're like, well, why in the War Games does the French bloke that they pull through the window, why is he still speaking French? Because the TARDIS is in the World War I zone, so surely it's working. And there's the whole thing with the Atlanteans in Underwater Menace. There's plenty of examples. In fact, there's a whole list in the Book of Lists of foreign languages being spoken. And
even the Hath just speak bubble. So we don't get to hear it, but Martha does. Well, that's just not nice.
Yes, I was really hoping that they'd put a subtitle track on the DVD which kind of had what they were saying, but it just says bubbling or gurgling, I think it does.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was a really interesting thing to do, to go, just for one episode, we're going to say it doesn't work for the viewers, but it clearly works for Martha because Martha is conversing with them. I thought that was a really interesting thing to do.
It is not to distract from the conversation, but have you seen that her and Bernard Cribbins are in a new TV series on CBeebies, written by Russell T Davies?
I saw the little video. Yeah.
Oh no, I've been watching it every day. Oh yeah, it's actually incredibly good.
You have an excuse.
That is true. I have a very small child who absolutely loves it and thinks Bernard Cribbins rocks. No influence from me at all, but it's nice to see Martha acting.
How any child could not think that Bernard Cribbins rocks. I mean, obviously, I thought that Bernard Cribbins rocked from the Wombles, from the Railway Children, and from the Spoon Salesman. May I reserve the BBC Two channel for the duration of this televisual feast? I mean, it's fantastic.
It's all right. My wife was going through my MP3 player, and she went, "You've got the best of Bernard Cribbins." I went, "Doesn't everyone?" So yeah, sorry, I was distracted. So yes.
Anyway,
track one.
Well, so let's should we actually kind of throw some feedback in?
Right. Okay.
We actually had some stuff in.
We did. Well, you did. Nobody emailed me at all.
Yes, I did. So
nobody's been emailing me at all for months. I've got nothing.
Well, yeah, no, people don't usually email me either. But anyway, so we've had a message from Mr. Chin. We've had one from Mark Wilson and one from my brother John.
And he bothered to email you rather than just turn around in the room and talk to you. Then.
Well, I mean, I don't see him that often. I mean,
that's fair enough.
I saw him very recently because his son was born in January, so I went down and we did have a brief chat, but it was mostly about other stuff. So anyway, do you want to read the first one from Mr. Chin?
Yes, just bear with me. I shall bring it up on the televisual screen thing I have in front of me. Monitor, that's the word. Right, from Mr. Chin. Hi, Luke and Michael. Here's a quick fan theory. It's my belief that the first Doctor's edict that you can't change history, not one light of it, believe me, I've tried. Sorry, that was a terrible impression. Still stands and has always stood. Fixed points, flux, unwritten, rewritten, and other combinations are all evidence of the Doctor's hubris as he flies too close to the sun. His downfall has been glimpsed in Waters of Mars and Trial of a Time Lord. At the fields of... Now, I cannot pronounce that word.
Trenzalore.
Will the Sentinels of History demand that the Doctor stops destroying the web of time, or will they come round and give him a slap? No, leave it, sorry. Stop editing the nice man's text. As that would be an incredibly dour ending, I expect that there would be a twist of some sort. Perhaps the silence are actually to blame. But my main point is that the stories have more integrity when you can't change history. Of course, the Doctor will still be changing things, but he's part of events, then he really isn't. So keep up the great podcasts. All the best. Craig Hansen.
Right. So this is an interesting thing, because this is fan theories about the ongoing story of the show. So we're talking about stuff that hasn't happened yet, and so this is more speculation, because Craig may be right, or he may have to completely change his thought.
And it always comes down to what the showrunner or executive producer or whoever's in charge, how they see time and how they see the show, or script editor, whatever, whoever's in charge of the creative side, executive producer.
My brother has some comments on that as well.
Which we can come back to. So
we'll come back to him later. But anyway, so you can't change history, not one line. They see,
yeah. Exactly. And I don't know, because... hang on. Here's another fan theory that'll make things even better. The reason unit dating doesn't work is that unit takes place in a variety of parallel universes.
Right.
Not just the one separate parallel world to us.
Right.
Is Doctor Who our world? Right. Categorically no. Because Russell T Davies announced to the world that the aliens existed. You could just about get away with saying everything's a secret and it's kept back from us so that we don't go mad. But Russell T Davies did the whole storylines where the universe went, oh, the aliens are here, and that's fine, and that changed history. So therefore, there's our world without Doctor Who in it, boring world, and then there's this parallel world that we get to see through the gift of the televisual medium.
Yes.
So in this world, anything can happen, including the end of the universe. Quite boring ending. But I'm sure in the original Doctor Who, it was kind of implied that it was our world, and it kind of felt a bit more exciting that you could come across the Doctor. But then you had female prime ministers before or after they were, and it just messed with everything. So rather than once you've got one parallel timeline, you might as well have a few. Because then you can have Sarah Jane coming from the 80s, you can also have another Brigadier retiring in 1977, and it doesn't matter anymore.
That's the first time I've heard anybody resolve the unit dating in that way.
Because the Doctor gets to visit lots of different versions of unit.
Yeah.
Which is how come various Doctors can be recognised when other ones can't. It just depends on which one he happens to have hit running. An interesting theory there. I mean, that's another one of Andy's. Sorry.
Okay. I mean, I've got an interesting thought on the whole you can't change history.
Yeah.
In the classic series, you either had a story set in the future, a story set in the present, or the near future, or, and this is important, a story set prior to 1963. Yes.
I think I know where you're going with this.
You
can't change the history before the people who are with you.
So I mean, there was a case. So you had Mordred Undead, where you had 1977 and 1983. So in that case, there was some past that was the recent past. But largely, the show in the classic era didn't do stories set within its own past, if you know what I mean. So, as in during that 26-year run that the show was being made, there weren't really any stories that went and said, apart from when you got to Remembrance, when they were like, right, we're going to do a story set in 1963.
Yes.
We've now got to a point with the new series...
But it was set several months after An Unearthly Child.
Exactly. But you've now got to the point with the new series where stories are being set in the past that happen during the time that the show was being made originally. So, for example, you've got Father's Day, which is set in 1987, which was when the show... in our world, was being made, which is just
odd. Good point.
You've got Day of the Moon, which is set in 1969. So again, you've got a story that's been made now, but is set 6 years into when Doctor Who was being made on TV. So rather than, as the show originally had, you had the past, which was before 1963. You had the present and the near future, and then the far future. You've now got this overlap of 50 years. Where to us, the past is everything before 2013. But 50 years of that is when Doctor Who was being made. So you've got all these predictions that were made by the classic series, which haven't come true. Unless, of course, as you say, the government managed to keep them all secret. Like, we didn't know that we were sending people to Jupiter in 1975, or whenever it was.
Or right now there is a Dalek in Utah, and...
Yeah, things like that, yes.
Yeah, or there's been a Dalek in Utah, and Utah was almost destroyed, but then it wasn't, or the power went off, and it didn't. But then again, and just to make it even, just to muddy the waters even more, Matt Smith's Doctor has reset the entire universe, so what happened, we just don't know. What actually has happened. We just don't know how they rebuilt the universe from one person being extrapolated. Sounds a bit Hitchhiker's Guide for my liking.
It was very what's the word? Total perspective vortex, wasn't it? But
yeah.
You've then also got, well, how did the spin-offs fit in? Because Miracle Day supposedly happened at the same time that the Doctor, Amy, and Rory were in Utah. I think someone worked out that was the timescale. And so Torchwood is supposed to be the same universe as Doctor Who.
But I've got a solution to that.
Okay.
You can completely ignore Torchwood. Actually, no. You can watch series 1 and 2 and enjoy them. But Miracle Day, what you do is you go around and you wipe every copy in the universe and hypnotise everyone into thinking it didn't happen. And I think that's the best solution to Miracle Day, because you'll never get those 10 hours back.
Fantastic. I like that.
It's possibly the only solution. The best bit of Miracle Day is the DVD commentary by Russell T Davies, going, I don't know if anyone's going to like this, and I'm going, well, I can tell you. And it's just, I'm sorry, I liked it even less than I liked Children of Earth Smurfs, and God, I hated that.
You didn't like Children of Earth?
I couldn't bear it.
Children of Earth was fantastic.
I gave up and watched Quatermass and went, I'm going to watch Quatermass, the last Quatermass instead, because at least that's, good.
Oh, well, never mind.
Sorry. Well, no, but you see, you have got a serious point. There's Sarah Jane's, which I adore, running parallel as well.
Yes.
Taking place at the same time as... Can you imagine... Sorry, this is actually... I've suddenly, because I'm speaking off the top of my head, it now sounds like bad taste. But can you imagine an episode of Sarah Jane Smith set in the same time and universe as Miracle Day, where everyone wasn't dying? That's now why it sounds like bad taste, but you get what I mean.
No, I mean...
If these universes are meant to exist at the same time in the same thing, it just doesn't quite work.
Yes.
There's a grinding of gears.
Although they're supposed to take place in the same universe, because obviously we've seen the seeds of both Torchwood and Sarah Jane within the actual parent show of Doctor Who, dramatically the 3 series take place in different dramatic universes.
Without question, you're right there.
Obviously, Sarah Jane takes place in a dramatic universe which is totally geared up for kids.
Good.
Doctor Who takes place in a dramatic universe which is
very
geared
good
up for the family, and then Torchwood obviously is geared
in its
a
own
dramatic
universe, yes,
for adults. But again, it comes back to my mantra here. It's just a TV show, and there's only so much thought that I want to put into it. I mean, the fact that I'm here talking to you clearly shows that I'm prepared to put a lot more thought into it than your average man on the street. So I don't know. Perhaps anyway.
Can I just say for the listeners, this will not be resolved. None of this will be resolved.
No, that's not the point of this.
In the end of this whole conversation, we will come to the conclusion that even if it matters, does it matter that it matters? And more importantly, canon and what matters and what doesn't matter to you is always going to be personal. You'll always take away your favourite stories, and you'll always take your favourite moments away, and there'll be stuff that doesn't make sense, but you'll just kind of go with it. And that's what it comes down to in the end, is what we still love it.
Yeah.
I mean, Doctor Who has gone from being the most wonderful member of a family to this black sheep you don't talk about, but it's still family, and you'll still defend it to the hilt to anyone else.
Yeah, of course.
But big chunks of it, if you start thinking about it and questioning it, just don't make sense.
Yeah.
Should we do the next one?
Well, I think we'll follow on with the one from my brother. So
Makes sense. Do you want to read that one?
I'll read that. So he says, in terms of my take on accepted Doctor Who history, having little contact with fandom, I would take the original series up to 1989 as canonical, and e.g. see the development of Time Lord Society as fairly straightforward, unlike Jan Vincent Rudsky, who on seeing Deadly Assassin for the first time thought that the change in the Time Lords from the War Games as supreme arbiters, etc., to petty politicians was ridiculous. Then I would add the New Adventures and Virgin, etc., where they extend stuff sensibly.
Well...
As for the new series, where it contradicts the 1990s books, I ignore it. It's new stuff and silly. Okay, you can see what kind of guy my brother is. In my universe, Gallifrey and the Time Lords still exist. There is no Time War. Rassilon is good. The Doctor still only has 12 regenerations. And Genesis didn't change anything. I believe in the fairly much immutable web of time, except where it suits me to allow it to be bent.
You see, I was with him until that last bit. Right. And,
so
basically,
basically what he's saying is, as far as he's concerned, what he thinks is right, and anybody else can have their own opinion, but he's going to ignore it. Which I think is a reasonably sensible opinion to have, particularly as he says he's not really involved with fandom, so he's not really got anybody to argue about it with. So he's quite happy in his interpretation of the show. Which,
to be fair, was how a lot of Doctor Who fans were in the days before internet or indeed Friends. But before the internet, there were a lot of people who were on their own. I mean, I started the Tin Dog podcast because I'd moved miles away and didn't know anyone else. And I needed to talk about Doctor Who, and I wasn't going to, jeopardise my marriage. So I thought I'd talk about to other people. And that was where anyone who would listen. And luckily, about 1 million people have. But it's that thing. So yeah, the insular world of Doctor Who, and you just go round and round and round in circles. You start thinking of stuff. But yeah, the guy who just said the Deadly Assassin's ridiculous because they've changed the Time Lords, that's silly. Up to that point, you'd seen one Time Lord standing in midair. You'd seen a couple of Time Lords panicking in a control room, and another few Time Lords standing in a big black room going, "Oh, naughty Doctor, must regenerate you and send you on a Series 6B mission, but let's not talk about it in order to make things fit." But if you see what anything...
No, I know. I'm totally with him on that. I don't have a problem with.
I've got no problem because I think you just saw more Time Lord Society, and you realise that they were all they were petty for a reason. They're practically immortal. They've got nothing else to do,
and they've written themselves a law that says they can't.
They can't do anything. Yeah, and they're like the Q, only not quite as powerful because they would need technology to do that, and Q don't.
Yeah.
But that's it. So they're still petty and pointless, and the rest of the universe is basically a load of toys for them to play with, and they're not allowed to open their toy box anymore.
Yes,
and that's it. So that was the Time Lords. I liked them, and as for the new adventures, yeah, that's brilliant. The lung barrow stuff's great, except for the looms. How do you make a new Time Lord? You use a loom. And the Doctor's weird because he's got a belly button and his family call him Snail, which I must admit I absolutely loved.
So this was the difference between my brother and I. We both got into Doctor Who by reading the Target books from the local library.
Yes.
And we both started collecting the VHS. I think he got the 5 Doctors for a birthday or a Christmas present or something, and then the two of us jointly bought Spearhead from Space.
The 5 Doctors is the introductory choice of many Doctor Who fans. You start off with a little bit of 5 Doctors here, and before you know it, you've gone, Trial of a Time Lord just sitting there, and then...
If you watch the 5 Doctors first, it also means you can enjoy Richard Hurndall's performance without worrying about the fact that he's not William Hartnell.
True.
But
to
anyway,
be fair, a lot of people our age, or my age especially, did that because they didn't see the earlier Doctor Who's.
Exactly.
Or they might have seen Unearthly Child, but it was...
5 Faces,
yeah, exactly. But then straight after that, you saw 5 Doctors, and that was fine. And I couldn't remember him being in Blake 7. So as far as I was concerned, that was fine.
Yeah.
He was just an old bloke with wasn't a wig at all. Because that's the age I was. And that was, like you said, that's the audio experience it in.
Yeah.
But that's not the case now.
But I was just going to say, the difference between me and my brother was that I then really went after collecting the VHS releases, and he went after, because he was a much more of a voracious reader than me. He went after buying all the new adventures,
which of course they don't. I mean, I worked in a bookshop at the time, so I was getting all of them, and that was fab. Buying them and just getting to keep them, and I've got a full set somewhere.
I think my brother did at one point, but I think since he got married, a lot of them have fallen by the wayside.
Well, no, I think my plan is to, what's the word? Sell them on eBay, that's it.
Because they're worth quite a bit these days, aren't they?
Apparently so, but not in the condition that I've got them in, I hasten to add. They're very nice, but they're just not perfect. But yeah, so I did both, and that wasn't clever and wasn't very helpful at all to your bank account.
Yeah.
Because the VHS it was like, it's another month. Brilliant, I'm going to have to buy another one. Oh, God, I got no money. And it literally was the drug of choice. And luckily, I sold all my VHS, transferred them all over to DVD using a recorder. And I've been replacing them as time's been going by. So I've had a complete set on DVD in some format for about 6 years. And I've been replacing them as they've been coming out.
I think I probably owned about half of the series on VHS.
Yeah.
Before I started replacing them on DVD. I had seen everything that it's possible to see, but there's a handful of stories that I've never owned. So Reign of Terror, it may arrive through the post this morning. I don't know. We'll see.
It's awfully good.
It's one of those ones that I've seen, but I've never owned a copy of. But what was I going to say? I had a thought there, and it's gone out of my head.
That's not a problem.
But so what do you make of what my brother says at the end? In my universe, Gallifrey and the Time Lord still exist, but there is no Time War. Rassilon is good. The Doctor still only has 12 regenerations.
Well, it's lovely, but it's just not going to work, because we're going to get more Doctor Who beyond 12, unless the BBC decides finally they're going, because they've gone, it's been back 10 years, the viewing figures aren't as brilliant as they could be. Why don't we try it on a Tuesday night? No, sorry. They'll say something. They'll do something. They'll say we have to give it a couple of years off, and then it might not come back. Because I thought with the cuts in, I mean, obviously we've had a hiatus here by the back door last year.
Yes,
and because they've basically got, because I think all actors are going to do 3 years and then go away. Officially, strictly speaking, Tennant did 5 years, because he did 2005 Christmas.
And he just about made it in 2010. And he
just about made it in 2010. So he just about did 5 years, but really he only did three and a bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what they're heading for each Doctor, because they become famous and good actors and can go off and do other things then.
So you think we'll lose Matt Smith
at Christmas next year?
At Christmas, okay.
Yeah, or the problem with regenerating him in November is that then becomes the story. It's his last story.
Rather than it being the 50th anniversary special.
Rather than be the 50th anniversary, the news event is, let's regenerate him. So this way you get two news stories. You get your 50th anniversary special, and then at Christmas you regenerate him into someone else.
Would they do that again at Christmas?
Well, yeah, because it's the most watched episode, so you can kind of hook someone in.
I'm just saying the last time they did it was... Anyway, at least said about the end of time, the better.
True, no, that's fair enough. But it's kind of a tradition to do it around then.
Yeah, and I suppose we did have Tennant. His first episode was.
Well, that's what I was thinking. So it doesn't bode well for fans. But I'd love him to stay for another year. I really would, because I want him to spend a whole year with the Coleman monster. But I just don't know what's going to...
Is that what you're calling it?
Well, no, that came off the top of my head. I've actually been calling her Souffle Girl.
Souffle Girl, yeah, indeed.
Because I just don't know what to call her. Do you call her Clara, Oswin, I don't know. Ozzy?
Okay, so fan theories. Who is she? Putting your money on the table, Michael. Who is she?
Okay. The obvious fan theory is Scarth, the Jaggeroth parallel. She's someone who's been split through time.
Yep, that's my favourite.
My original fan theory was she until she died at Christmas. This Christmas, after the Dalek story, my fan theory was that the Doctor will save her, and the act of saving her messes with time, makes the Daleks then remember him and her, and thus changes history.
Ooh.
Was my other fan theory, because that one worked when she didn't die at Christmas. But she's now died twice. So how many times is she going to die? And also, can she talk to herself across time? You have a theme of duality all the way through. She's a Dalek, she's a human. She's a governess. Works in a bar. Her natural accent is the Cockney, is the lower class, working class thing. But she was putting on the posh one. So it's there's a duality, and then there's the fan theories about snow always occurring in her stories. So you just don't really... There's not enough information out there to come up with a cohesive theory. We're grasping at straws.
My favourite theory that I read was along the lines of she was born on the 23rd of November, and she lived until she was 26. So she started the same day as the classic series, and she lived for as long as it did. So that's a good place to start.
But 100 years earlier.
Well, yeah, probably about 90 7 years earlier, I think. Then there's the fact that when we first meet her, she's the entertainment officer on board a spaceship. And the second time we meet her, she's a governess. So she's there to entertain and educate, which is what Doctor Who...
Oh, no, she's the spirit of the BBC.
So she's the spirit of the show.
That's appalling.
Then, this is my favourite one. So I apologise to whoever this was on Gallifrey Base who put this down. Her initials are OOC. Okay? Now, OO is the production code for the Ice Warriors, and C is the production code for Inside the Spaceship. So in the Snowmen, she runs away from the Ice Warriors, who are the Snowmen, inside the spaceship. Talk about that.
You do know that in comparison to other to these people, we are the people on the street. We don't give it that much thought, and we're perfectly sane.
When I saw that, I was like, that is absolutely wonderful.
You've just defined why I don't go near Gallifrey Base unless I need to.
The number of times I've started replies on Gallifrey Base and then gone, no, this isn't worth it, and closed the tab, it's ridiculous.
I can't handle it. It's like living in a countryside and then visiting a busy city and just being blown away by the whole thing. I'm sorry, but I'm a country mouse. I'll hang around other forums, but that one's just too big. Right. Okay,
so anyway,
got one last piece.
Let's go back to Genesis of the Daleks then, because you said you were agreeing with my brother up until the point where he said Genesis didn't change anything.
I think it did, because after that point you got Davros to appear in all the stories after that. Just going off what you can see. Davros appeared, and this is the classic series, Davros appeared from then on, and the Daleks were less cohesive, and they were always in a civil war with each other, more or less, constantly. And you didn't really get that beforehand.
But again, if you flip it round to what I was saying before, in my podcast, you're sort of judging...
I'm judging story A on what the effect it had on story D and E.
Well, you're kind of looking at it and going, well, Davros didn't appear before Genesis of the Daleks, but the reason that Davros didn't appear before Genesis of the Daleks was because Terry Nation hadn't thought him up yet.
No, fair enough. Okay, how about this for an argument then? Tom Baker actually says in the story, Sarah Jane says, "Did you change anything?" And Tom says, "A little bit, more or less. Delayed them by 1,000 years." Yeah. And that is an effect.
Yeah, no, of course it is. But again,
but then, of course, we're back to the other fan theories. Did the other Daleks leave? The ones from the city? Did some Daleks take off in a spaceship? It's all. We just don't know. We'd need to have been there, and we can't have been there because it's not real.
Yes. Well, and there's also what you were saying before about it's a sci-fi show. We believe what people say. The Doctor might be wrong. I mean, the fact that he says I've put them back by 1,000 years. I mean, how the heck does he know? It's just a guess. Yes. Anyway. There we go. Right. Okay. So, Mark Wilson says, "Hello. For some reason, one of your older vlogs showed up again in my feed reader, which reminded me of something someone wrote on the subject of Troughton's introduction of the Time Lords as a race." So this is another of my points. LiveJournal's Parrot Knight has this to say in his review of the War Games DVD release. The production notes also reveal how far the intentions of the writers of the War Games could be changed by Patrick Troughton's tendency to paraphrase his lines rather than deliver them verbatim. This is interesting. As scripted, the Doctor would have described the Time Lords as the rulers of his own kind rather than my own people, changing the emphases. Potentially, of decades of fan argument between those who think all the people of Gallifrey, not of course named here as such, are Time Lords, and those who think that they are an elite. I don't offer this as decisive evidence, merely a curiosity that contrasts production intent with actualisation. After all, as a fan of the Morbius Doctors, I'm aware that some people can't accept the obvious truth that Hartnell wasn't the first Doctor.
And I just need to say, there is a winky smile after that.
There is a little guess. There is a little winky smile.
Because
so this is interesting, because much as I love the production notes, I haven't actually watched them on that many stories. But
they're brilliant. They're brilliant.
No, I know, they're fantastic. And as viewers of my podcast will know, I'm very fond of using this clip of Troughton going, of talking about the Time Lords as a race. But it's interesting to realise that obviously Dix and Hulk didn't write it like that.
At all, no.
At all, no.
It does make sense. And I'm willing to go with that, because when you finally get to see Gallifrey later, you do get to see that the Shubberguns as the ordinary people. And, of course, for me, it's Time Lord, i.e., the lords and ladies, the people at the top of society, the ones who went to university, not the people who take the bins out.
Okay, well, let's go back to the Shibugans.
For me, that the Shibugans, they're the ones who go, oh, I'm going to live outside and be the good life.
That itself is fan theory, because we have the Shibugans mentioned in The Deadly Assassin, but we never actually see them. And then the ones we see in the Invasion of Time say, we were Time Lords.
So that's why I'm thinking they're more the good life. They've given it all up and they've gone to live outside. Yes. They're all,
But again, as I said before, it honestly never occurred to me to think that Gallifreyan and Time Lord were not synonymous until I ran into other fans.
It never occurred to me not to think that, because there's an interview with Christopher Eccleston when they say to him, and my issues with Christopher Eccleston, everyone does.
I know you do.
I think he should have done a posh voice, right?
Yeah.
He can do posh voices. It's Time Lord. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
And there's an interview in the very first one where somebody says to him, so your choices with the performance, he goes, yeah, I'm going to play it Northern. So you're not going to do Time Lord because it's a Lord? And he goes, and the look on his face is like, oh, bugger, it's a bit late now. And it's a bit late now. I've just left. Never mind, filmed loads. So I think that was definitely it. I think they were Time Lords, and there was ordinary people. There were that live on Gallifrey, because not everyone can be a Time Lord. Not everyone gets to travel through time.
Yeah, but at the same time, you've got the fact that they couldn't even travel through time until Omega did his thing. So
they weren't Time Lords then. They were Gallifreyans.
But then at the same,
that's like me saying, yes, I'm a hugely successful author. Have you had any much published? Not really, no. But I'm a hugely successful. It's like going around saying, we're all Time Lords. Can you travel in time? No, but I own a watch. It's
okay. But then on the flip side, you've got something like, and again, this doesn't make an awful lot of sense, but you've got the fact that River Song has Time Lord DNA. Whatever that means.
Then we can get back if you want to cancel. We can sort that by saying it's the TARDIS translation unit. Because people around it, not a lot of them have used the word Gallifrey.
Yeah.
And also, is Gallifreyan DNA Time Lord DNA? Or is the people who can travel through time, the people who are born with apparently a symbiotic nuclei, whatever that is, or is that made up as well? Because that's what's implied in The Two Doctors.
Two Doctors, yeah.
Other people who are connected to TARDISes or whatever, just the Time Lords.
Well, I mean, you've got the fact that Amy and Rory are all they're starting off with is human DNA.
Yeah,
and the fact that they conceived River Song whilst they were in the TARDIS, that was the thing that gave her Time Lord DNA. So that
exactly. So does that mean she was? Well, no, that could mean she could pass rather than have Time Lord DNA, she could have TARDIS DNA.
Yes,
it's just as likely. Or more likely, she's got time vortex in her.
Yes, that makes more sense.
Would have made more. She's got time vortex permeating her DNA.
Yes,
right. But permeating and in her are two ends of the same meaning, but specifically aren't the same meaning.
You've then got the fact that because of this, she can regenerate.
Yeah.
However, the Time Lords gave the minions the ability to regenerate by using machines.
Yes.
So we've
and colour separation overlay.
So again, there are ways that you can see around the Doctor regenerating however many times, because the minions could regenerate thousands of times using their machines, and so you get the sense that the 12 regenerations is some kind of limit. I mean, this is obviously not an original theory. This gets bandied around all the time.
Oh yeah, you can only have 12 to stop people from becoming completely immortal and mental, because the only immortal Time Lord is Rassilon.
Yes, and
so the chances are that during the
time bodily regeneration in his tomb, and he turns other people into statues.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to share his toys. But,
I think it's the fact that he's good, and he knows that other people following him might be bad. I don't know.
Try this. In the Time War, they needed to have an unlimited amount of people to battle the Daleks. Rassilon is woken and gives his gift to all of his people. He switches off the 12 regeneration limit in order to allow them to win the war.
Right, yes.
So he allows all Time Lords, including the Doctor, an infinite number of regenerations.
But then you come back to the question of how effective is regeneration? Because here's another thing that changed, or my perception of what other people thought of it changed, was that I never really thought of regeneration as the Doctor dying. I mean, I know, thinking about it, there are kind of hints in the dialogue of the classic series that that's sort of what's happening. But to me, I always thought of it as, well, he's just regenerating because the actor needs to change. Again, I'm thinking in that mindset.
Yes.
And it wasn't really until the new series kind of put that emphasis on the Doctor dies and another man walks away that I kind of thought about it in that term. And I think the other thing is that there's plenty of examples in the classic series of Time Lords dying without regenerating. As in, it's not your get out of jail free card. There are things that someone can do to you which will kill you just as well as it will kill someone who doesn't have the ability to regenerate.
Again, introduced by a writer in order to give some sort of level of worry to the audience.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I'm sort of influenced a lot by Terence Dick's novelisation of Terror of the Autons, where the Brigadier threatens the Master with a revolver, and the dialogue, the process something like, at this close range it would kill him as effectively as it would kill a human. And obviously we then see that happen to the Master in Last of the Time Lords, when his wife shoots him.
Yeah, so there wouldn't be much left to regenerate.
Yeah. But then obviously in that sense the doctor's going regenerate, and the Master
because what
chooses
Captain
not
Jack
to.
does is nowhere near the same as what the Doctor does. When he regenerates, because there was that nonsense where they pulverise him and there's nothing left, and he eventually rebuilds himself because he's in a couple of bags, and I had so many questions about that.
I think again that was the mechanics of they could do that because it was torture.
It was ridiculous. If you managed to slice Captain Jack completely in two, could you grow two Captain Jacks? One of them could become the face of Bo, and so on and so on.
Oh, dearie me. Morbius Doctors. Let's just come to that last point from Mark.
I've got a solution to that one. Do you want to hear it?
Go on.
Right. The Doctor is having a duel with Morbius.
Yes.
Right. The Doctor cycles back through his regenerations. In order to win the duel, he imagines other people who happen to look a lot like the production crew at the time.
Indeed,
and put those into the fight as part of his arsenal.
Right, that's fine. I mean, I'm happy with going with the explanation that they're Morbius, but
and I think some of them are. I think some of them are Morbius.
The production team have gone on record as saying that their intention was, though, to suggest that the Doctor had more lives beforehand.
Yeah. As a joke.
And obviously, that was pre. Interesting enough, it was the same production team that did Deadly Assassin, but it was pre-Deadly Assassin. So they did that before they then introduced the 12 regeneration limit. So,
right. And also, the first Doctor would look different because he would have looked younger or older or whatever. Yes,
but he's not going to look like Philip Hinchcliffe, Christopher Barry, and Graham Harper all in one, is he?
That's a valid argument, well made. Right, so
dearie me.
To sum it all up, after we've talked for far too long,
yes,
does it matter?
Well,
no, it does matter. It matters because it actually keeps us awake at night. It keeps me awake, and I sort of lie there, and every so often I go, oh. Like if you're watching Sapphire and Steel and suddenly you look around and go, oh my God, all of these video cameras, the man with no face who lives in photographs could come out of a printout and kill you then. And you go, hang on, that's not real at all. But it does keep you awake. So,
I think possibly because The Five Doctors was the first one that I actually saw, but also because it is one of the most amazing things that the show has ever produced. I always used to imagine running into the Raston Warrior robot and wondering, would I be able to stay still enough to avoid it shooting me?
Exactly. Oh, beware the man in Lycra.
Or I think I probably occasionally had some more darker thoughts of, if I can get someone else to move, then it'll shoot them and I can escape.
I see, that's lateral thinking, and that's what Doctor Who teaches us all.
But I think I do get to a point of going, why am I thinking about this, Luke? Why are you thinking about this, Luke? It's just a TV show, and I think I do love trying to put the pieces together, but there's something in my head that just gets to a point and says, look, stop thinking about it. You're not going to resolve this, and actually, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It's fun.
Exactly.
But when it starts to become the kind of I don't want to tar any other fans with a particular brush, but when it becomes so obsessive that it obscures what's actually more important, I think that's when it becomes a problem. I think it's like anything in life. If you don't have the right perspective on it, then it threatens to mess up other parts of your life.
Exactly. Right. Thank you very much for being on my show, and
thank you very much for being on mine.
Yours. Thank you for exactly. So, I'm sure this may appear on both of our feeds at various points in the future. As soon as I've got some space to put it on.
I think that's the plan. Yes.
So anyway, thank you very much. And what do I normally say at the end? Be seeing you.
Yeah, and I don't have a normal sign-off. It's changed.
You
Next
need
time,
one. Get one.
Well, no, I used to have one, and then I kind of resolved it. There was a kind of ongoing narrative within my show that resolved it because it was Colin Baker's line. And then when we actually got Colin Baker to say it himself in a bookshop in Lakeside, I was like, well, that's it. We can't go on with that line. So I haven't come up with anything since.
Well, that's it then. So, shall we just go... ta-ra. Okay. Thanks for listening, and I hope we haven't bored you, Richard.
Yeah.
Be seeing you. Bye. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all copyright and property of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Whostrology the book is available directly from Tellus Publishing and from Amazon. For personal Whostrology readings, visit whostrology.com.